I still run into a lot of teams that are really frustrated when they work at a software company and the way people are doing work together doesn't really feel agile. It just feels like there's a lot of measurement going on and a lot of process theater, things that aren't really helping people. And I was thinking about the best way to kind of help explain to people the difference between something that's really helping you be agile and something that's not really helping you be agile, because I think there's a lot of that going on. So I thought the easiest way to explain this to you would be just to use like an analogy of a couple simple aspects of a car. You know how companies are always using Scrum or Kanban to do regular or iterative releases of their software, right? When the team's doing that work though, in the sprint, if they're doing Scrum, or every time they pull a ticket off the board, if they're doing Kanban, it really depends a lot on what type of work's being done. You can either be as a team doing work that your company already came up with ahead of time that's sitting in the product backlog of some sort. Usually that's a list, right, of all the ideas of the things that the company thinks that customers are going to want. Or the ideas can be new ideas, things that nobody thought of ahead of time that customers start telling you once they start using the product. The thing I think many software companies and teams don't realize is that those new ideas that nobody can think of ahead of time often turn out to be the most valuable ideas. Why are those ideas the most valuable? Well, the whole reason is because when you sell a product to a customer, there can be one little aspect of it that really turns them off and they don't want to buy it or they don't want to use it. And so really finding that perfect mix of the right features in the right way that the software works is what's necessary for people to not just accept the software and say, yeah, it's okay, but to love and rave about the software. And the only way you're going to build that type of a software product is if your team listens to the customer, and when you get feedback that you might want to change direction, you actually do something about it. And whether your team changes direction or prioritizes new work above existing work is really what determines if your team or your company is agile. I usually find it's never Scrum or Kanban or doing user stories or testing or DevOps or any of these other disciplines that make it hard for a team to be agile. It's really, are the people on the team, including the management and the product manager, humble enough to actually build things that weren't their idea and put building those things sometimes above, as far as priority, things that they already thought of that they think are really good ideas that they came up with. And I know for me, in the couple startups that I tried to do on the side over my career, it was very hard for me to let go of my ideas. So this is not a trivial thing for people to do. I find people really respond well to analogies. So I want to give you this one to help your manager or other people you work with, or maybe yourself, just understand the difference between Scrum and Kanban and all these practices and being agile. And the easiest way to do that is to start by just thinking of Scrum as the motor of a car. You know, you got a group of people building software, they're doing requirements, they're doing testing, they're writing the code, they're getting it approved, all the things that normally goes into developing the software. That whole group of people doing work to produce the software, think of that as the motor. It's the part of the car that's creating energy and it's propelling it forward. So every time your team pulls work off the product backlog or takes a ticket off a Kanban board and starts working on it, think of that as your team's putting energy or power into the car to propel it forward. The problem is, as the car's moving, just like in real life, there are times where you can't keep going straight anymore. The company needs to shift, they need to turn, they need to do something different than what was planned when you started moving the car. And just like this analogy, turning the car or changing directions is, in software development, the process of taking new work that the team just discovered and putting it high up on the backlog or at the top of the list of tickets for people to select to work on if you're doing Kanban or a ticket-based system or something like that. You see, a company who's agile can turn much more often. When they went to pick, are we going to use Scrum? Are we going to use Kanban? Are we doing monthly budgeting? You know, what are all the different practices that we as a company picked to develop software? An agile company is going to pick those practices that make it easy to change direction. A non-agile company company is going to have to actually stop, turn around, and back up and make a turn that it missed. Because if your team makes it hard to change direction and you've picked a bunch of practices that don't encourage change, then by the time your team realizes they need to make a change, they're already committed to too much, either money or schedule or deadlines, and then changing becomes a lot more painful or difficult. A truly agile team that's thought about how do we make it easy for us to change is going to set up every one of their software development processes so that changing is quick and it's easy to do and doesn't cost the company any extra money when they change their direction. So if you have a team that's really fast, but they're not able to be agile, they can't actually change direction, the problem there is your team's not going to be able to respond to market changes. If all of a sudden a new competitor comes out with something that has to compete with you, or all of a sudden something changes in the relationships your company has with, let's say, other companies that provide APIs or vendors or things like that, that's going to cause all of a sudden your team to have to change. And if your team isn't set up with practices that help everybody truly change and be agile, well, then every single time one of those events occurs, it's just going to slow everybody way down and make developing software on that product really frustrating and probably slow and painful for most people. Instead, if you have a company that's truly trying to be agile and deliver exactly what customers want, they're going to be extremely responsive and adaptive to feedback. Whenever customers tell your team about something they'd like as a change, that's going to become one of the most important things to talk about on the team, because if it's true or it's something that the company and the team wants to invest in, you should really act on it right away and not put it way down the backlog and wait a long time to give it to customers, because the quicker you can get your product into the state that the customer likes everything that you have, that they're willing to pay for it, even if it doesn't have everything, it's going to start making money for the team or the company. And I think the number one thing that confuses people about agile development is it doesn't require tools, it doesn't require automation, it doesn't require Scrum or KANBAN. Really what it requires is that everybody who works together on a team to develop software trusts each other to make changes, and that they're going to do the best that they can. And when I've worked with teams where there's low trust and people are not allowed to change what's in the product, how the product's being built, how testing's being done, without going through a lot of approvals and a lot of communication, that just makes it way too slow for that team to respond to what customers want and how the market's changing. So the next time you're deciding on your team whether to do something and if it's going to help you be agile or not, ask yourself this: is it just going to help the motor move faster and push the product forward quicker, or is it going to help us steer? Because if the answer is it's going to help you steer, that is a practice that will actually help your team be agile. If it's only going to help you produce deliverables quicker, that's simply making your team faster. It's actually potentially going to make it slower to turn. So it's something that you have to actually ask yourself and your team in your unique situation. This is not a one-size-fits-all answer. And anytime coaches or consultants come along and try to tell a team that this is the one way to develop software, they're not being honest with you, because, at least in my experience, every single team, every single situation is different. So what are some of the practices you're using on your team that are helping you actually turn quicker or be more agile? And are there some practices that your team has chosen that now in hindsight you're kind of thinking about them and going, you know, these are actually making us produce things quicker, but I don't know that they're actually helping us turn? Leave me some comments below. And if you're new to my YouTube channel, you can always consider subscribing. And you can also always listen to this as a podcast on Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or iTunes. Just search for Healthy Software Developer and you'll find me. Until next time, thanks.